So I recently uploaded a video about honest thoughts of moving to Spain from the UK, and I was amazed at firstly how many people watched it, and secondly how many people who viewed it had only bad things to say about it in the comments. So it got me thinking about the UK in general, and why are so many people so miserable, and more importantly, the reasons why I decided to leave and move to Spain. So the point of this video today is to explain why I decided to leave the UK for good. Now, if like me, you want to retire comfortably, the UK is not the place to do it. It's ridiculously expensive there. The state pension is less than half the minimum wage, and it's one of the worst in the Western world. UK is supposed to be a first world country, but in my opinion, I think it's almost a third world country run by a first world city, and that's London. The UK now has very low standards. Crime rates are getting higher, and illegal immigration is out of control. We've got incompetent politicians that don't seem to know what they're doing, a chancellor who's openly lied on her CV, and a Prime Minister who just seems to be making things worse by the day. So sadly, in my opinion, there's no hope for the UK with the cost of living and all the other issues people are facing these days. If you're living in the UK and if you're working there full time or even retired, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I decided not to just continue living in the UK and paying what I was paying, more taxes while living there, and probably when I died, more for groceries, bills, etc. And you name it, the prices are going up for everything, and it's just not good enough. So you better guessed, I'm from Glasgow in Scotland, and I worked my whole working life and paid my dues and taxes, national insurance, and as my jobs got better, I was fortunate enough to earn more money, and for many years I ended up paying 40% of my salary in tax. However, I accepted that that was a price to pay for living in a great little country like Scotland. So I just paid my dues and got on with it. I was lucky enough to have nice cars, but the fun of owning a nice car has been taken away with the government pushing electric vehicles, rising car insurance, massive increases in road tax, higher repair, servicing and maintenance bills, and having to pay for parking wherever you go now. I just don't think anyone should be working full time or trying to enjoy a hard end retirement in what's supposed to be a first world country and just to survive. Most people who work in this country struggle to save any money. I read that around 90% of people in the UK can't raise 500 quid in an emergency, and that's a terrible statistic. People are struggling to save money, and after they've paid their mortgage, rent, council tax, energy and food bills, put any money aside for things that they actually let them try to have some kind of life, like monthly subscription fees for entertainment, etc. They literally have nothing left to enjoy. Now, whose fault is this? What's become of this country with the cost of living as high as it is? I believe it's down to serious mismanagement by successive governments over the past few decades, and I can't see it improving during my lifetime. Now, I paid tax at 40% for many years. So for every 100 quid I earned over 30 grand, they took 40 quid away, plus national insurance, of course. So I paid about 7% national insurance, so that's 47% of my salary that the government have took. So that's 47 quid for every 100 I earn. So when you add it all up, it's quite a lot. And it's around 1,500 quid a month for over 30 years. And in total, that's over £500,000 that I've paid into the system. Not counting the tax and insurance that I paid before I earned over 70 grand a year. So when I look at what will be paid as a state pension, a pittance, and I look at how much I've paid over the years, it's quite a substantial amount of money that I've contributed to the UK government's coffers. I didn't mind paying tax, but it's quite concerning when you're living in a country where they're making cuts like taking vulnerable people's heating allowance away, while spending 13.5 billion on foreign aid and 12.8 billion to the Ukraine in 23-24. The UK is going downhill. It's not a good country to live in now, and it's not a good country to grow up in. So the best thing you can do if you're British born and schooled there, and if you're young and working, especially if you're ambitious and adventurous, I think the best thing you can do is get out of the UK whenever you can. So we chose to move to Spain, and I hate to come down this hard on the UK, but the way I see it, the country's just not getting better. Everything's getting more expensive, and the government doesn't care about people at all now in the UK. They don't care about rising electricity and gas bills. They're probably going to increase national insurance and tax rates soon, and they're reducing benefits that people need to survive. Sadly, there are people in this country that need their benefits, and they're being stripped away. Now, another thing, of course, that's no one's fault, but the UK doesn't have the best of weather. So if I'm going to have a life instead of just living, I'm not going to settle for living in an expensive country where the weather's crap most of the year. I know the weather's not everything, but it's the 22nd of January. It's just after 1 o'clock, and it's 19 degrees, and it's very pleasant. And meanwhile, people back in Scotland that I know are shivering in the cold and the wet. So it might not be all about the weather, but it certainly helps you feel better when it's as nice as this in January. So having said all of that, here are some of my main gripes. First one's economic inequality. There's a huge wealth gap between different regions and social classes in the UK. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Areas in the north of England and Scotland often experience higher levels of poverty compared to the south, and there are now no-go areas seen as ghettos where the police just won't go. Money's being channelled to extravagantly paid bankers and tax-dodging companies, hedge fund managers, etc. But the cleaner in the office block where they all work can earn 100 times less and might be relying on food banks just to feed their family. They took away the heating allowance for pensioners, so you've got pensioners who don't earn a lot. Being on the state pension, they no longer work, and most have been unable to save a lot of money for their retirement. That generation, pensioners, are unlikely to have private pensions, and they have just what they have from the government, and winter in the UK is long and very cold. Next one's housing crisis. So UK is facing a housing shortage, and it's leading to higher prices and homelessness. Many young people just can't afford homes, especially in the major cities like London, and have no chance of ever getting social housing there. When I got married in the early 1980s, my wife and I bought a little two-bedroom flat in the East End of Glasgow, and we paid around £18,000 for it. Now, my earnings at the time were around £9,000 a year before tax and national insurance, so that meant our house cost us about 2 times my salary. 5 years and 2 kids later, we sold it for £27,000 and bought a nice little 3-bed semi-detached house for £45,000. And my earnings were now around 22 grand a year before tax and national insurance. So that meant the house still cost us around 2 times my salary. It's also worth mentioning that at that time there were lots of 100% mortgages around and great deals with only 5% deposit, etc. So it meant we didn't really have to put down much money when we bought our house. Now, fast forward to nowadays, my son recently bought his first house after renting for a few years and saving for his deposit. Now, he was earning around 20 grand a year, and the little house he purchased was £87,000. So that's over 4 times his salary. And he had to put down a deposit of £8,700. Now, he was lucky to find a nice little house that needed a bit of TLC, but not everyone is that lucky. So I'll just look at some averages to put things into perspective. Now, the average salary today in the UK is around 37 grand a year, although that must be being driven up by higher salaries paid in and around the south of England and London, because I know a lot of people who are earning much less than this, state pensioners included, but we'll get into that later. The average house price is now around £270,000, and you know that's around 7 times average earnings. Also, young buyers nowadays need to find deposits of around 27 grand to get a mortgage with a decent rate. And how are they supposed to do this and still have a life? Also, when you consider that around 5% of the population are on minimum wage and around 3.5% are on 0 hours contracts, so they're earning less than 24 grand a year, these unfortunate folk need to pay over 11 times their salary just for the average house. So they have no chance of getting on the property ladder. Also, it's unlikely they'll ever be considered for council housing either, as the point system used nowadays means they won't qualify for many, many years to come. So what are they supposed to do? My next point is political polarisation. So there's no doubt issues such as Brexit have deepened divisions within society, leading to a lot of political instability amongst the population. Now, politicians continue to reward themselves and pay rises higher expenses, whilst many work on another job at the same time as they're supposed to be representing their constituents. And at the same time, as we said, they're cutting heating allowances for pensioners, raising inheritance and capital gains tax, taxing businesses more to fund third world support and the Ukraine. And as I've said, it just looks like a third world country now, ruled by one first world city. Next point is increased healthcare strain. Now, the NHS has historically been a point of pride for the UK, but it now faces increased criticism these days just for long waiting times, underfunding, workforce shortages, etc. And many consultants are switching to the private sector, or are working as private contractors outside their normal hours. We've got nurses going to work abroad once they're qualified, just because the salaries in the UK is just too low for the job they do. It's increasingly difficult to see your GP. Waiting times for surgery are increasing, and we've now got patients dying in hospital corridors, and it's just nigh on impossible to see an NHS dentist these days. So NHS is in big, big trouble. So the next thing I want to talk about is environmental issues. So the UK has challenges related to climate change like most of the world has, in fact the whole world. There's pollution, biodiversity loss, and these have all raised concerns about sustainability and environmental protection. These days all the focus appears to be on green issues, which are not always practical. Many people take the word of a Swedish schoolgirl as gospel, but ignore the facts from highly qualified experts in their field. There's a massive push on for everyone to buy electric vehicles, and there's no adequate infrastructure in place to make that work. And very little discussion about where all the electricity required will come from. And that's before even consider the amount of cobalt required to make the batteries for electric vehicles. Britain's coal mine industry's gone, and the last coal-fired power station closed in 2024. But 60% of China's power stations are still coal-fired, around 1,100 of these. And despite this, global warming's your fault, because you haven't fitted LED light bulbs at home, or you don't switch a light off when you come out of a room. Next thing is social issues. There's ongoing issues related to racism, xenophobia, discrimination, and illegal immigration is now out of control. These social tensions affect community cohesion and public safety. There's no respect for the police, for authority, and many cities now have no-go areas that the police just won't go into. There's drunkenness, loutish behaviour everywhere, and just a general degradation in social standards. And I just don't want to live in a place that's like that. Let's talk about traffic and infrastructure. So congestion in cities and ageing infrastructure is creating significant transportation challenges in the UK. That's impacting on daily life and economic productivity. There are potholes that have potholes. Grass is being left to grow and is being called wilding. And there's endless increase in cycle lanes. And this isn't a country that's too wet and cold for cyclists of any volume to use them. The massive push of the electric vehicle mandate, when most drivers just don't want them. Car manufacturers are now being fined for not producing enough electric vehicles. And those fines will inevitably be passed on to people who do buy the cars, which will only make the price of cars even higher. Endless cycle goes on. And finally, we'll just talk about education disparities. Now, the UK has many world-renowned educational institutions, but there are disparities in education quality and access, particularly in disadvantaged areas. There's no doubt that kids from inner cities and in the north are much less likely to go to a good school or a good education establishment, or to continue into further education to get any meaningful degree. Because that's the other thing, that there are all sorts of nonsensical degrees that can be had nowadays in universities. And I think we all have heard of the most ridiculous one, which you can get a degree in golf course management. So it's just becoming a joke. So just to summarise, I thought long and hard about whether I should do this video or not. But so many people thought that the only reason I moved to Spain was because of the weather. So I just felt that, no, let's add a bit more sort of meat to the bones of that, and put a bit more detail in so that you can see the rationale behind it. And I don't know if you feel the same or feel different, but the great thing about life nowadays is that we're all entitled to our opinion, and that we don't all have to agree. So I didn't want me and my wife to just survive through our final years on the planet. You know, we never worked hard all those years just to survive. We wanted to live and to thrive in retirement. And because it was really only me that can make that happen, I decided to take action. Now, you could too. Save yourself for the future. Plan your own future. And think about it, you know, not just for you, but for your kids as well. Because, you know, where is it all going? What's it going to be like in 10, 20, 30 years in the UK moving forward? It certainly doesn't look like a nice place to live for me, and it really, really pains me to say that. So there you have it. that's this video come to an end. So as always, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribe. Maybe even share the video. You know, if you think it's something that might be worthwhile for your friends to have a look at. There's lots of people I know in the same sort of boat. So, you know, like, subscribe, and share. Look out for further videos, and hopefully it'll make you think. And I know that there are people who will just be ready to bring an onslaught of negativity in the comments. And that's another great thing about human beings. We're all entitled to our opinion, as we said, and you can type away as much as you like. It'll be interesting to see what the views are. And finally, you know, if you think there is hope for Britain, let us know in the comments. Just, you know, let's have a proper adult discussion about the state of the UK and how to fix it if we can. I promise I won't fall out with any of you. So, thanks for watching. All the best, and here's hope things get better.